The Business Renovator. I'm Coach Phil. So do you face fear or do you run from it? Today I want to take a couple of minutes and address that topic that many of us face throughout our lives. And it's something that can help us, and it's something that can keep us stuck in our ways. So let me bring up my buddy, Brian Monahan. Well, at least his book. It's an interesting book for sure. Just get my mouse working here will be great. Customer Delight 365, and the quote I picked from today's page is, to know and to do is really not to know, according to Stephen Covey. Now, Brian Monahan, my buddy and friend and curator of this book, he says he's not going to let us off as easy as Covey did. He says, consistently ask yourself this question. Based on what I know up to this point in my life, what would be the best way to proceed? Then proceed. Just do it. Now, one of the things around just do it is, in its simpleness, it seems real easy. But what I'm going to talk about today is it's not necessarily always that easy just to do it. There's some other things that get involved. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been on this journey for, gosh, I don't know, 3.5 decades, I think, something like that. I used to do it in years, but damn, there's so many numbers in the years that I decided that I wouldn't do years anymore. So today, let's look at fear. And maybe I'll get one idea out of this that speaks to you or somebody you care about. And you could share this with them. Matter of fact, I would invite you and ask you to share this out to the people you care about in your community. So let's see if I can get this mouse to bring up the screen I want to share. So we're going to start off with, what are critical constraints? Well, as you can see by this diagram, what critical constraints are the things that stop us. It's a narrowing of an artery, of a bridge. Road construction happens in the summer in most major places, and wide roads are compressed down into one road. A friend of mine in Atlanta was telling me about how it was a very difficult thing for him to get around already because of the construction and improvements. Like he said, once they get it done, it'll be brilliant. But right now, there's a constraint. So what are your critical constraints? Everybody's probably got some different ones from each other, but many of us have some that are similar. So fear, fantasized experience appearing real, is one way to explain what the acronym means, but there's going to be a couple of other ones when we get near the end of this presentation this morning. Google, as you can see, that's a big number, right? That's like 3.6 million results if you enter the word fear in it. Now, I didn't read all 3.6 million, obviously. I just wanted to get you an idea of how large this topic and subject is for most people. So here, look at this. Fear is a natural, powerful, primitive human emotion. It involves a universal biochemical response as well as a high individual emotional response. Fear alerts us to the presence of danger or the threat of harm, whether that danger is physical or psychological. Now, I guess in the days of the cavemen and those tigers, saber-toothed tigers, fear was the way it shows up for us today was probably relevant there, but we don't have too many tigers we need to stay away from. And sometimes we're letting fear be that critical constraint that's stopping us from being whoever we would like to be. We're talking ourselves out of it, which then takes it from not just emotional, but goes to the point of the psychological aspect. So here's some of the most common fears. I mean, I can't even say half those, but the simple ones are fear of flying. Let me make this bigger so I can actually read it. Yeah, so there's a fear of flying, fear of being enclosed in in spaces, like being buried in a box. If you've never seen it, go Google "Stop It" with Bob Newhart. Not only is it funny and makes me laugh, it's a very powerful anecdotal story about how fear can be insanely crazy for us to even have it. But I don't want to steal the thunder from Bob Newhart. So go check it out on YouTube. It's called "Stop It." It's about 5 minutes long. It's well worth it. It should make you laugh. There's another large word that says fear of insects, snakes, fear of dogs, fear of storms, fear of needles, open spaces, social phobias, and fear of heights are just a few of the most common fears. Moving right along, the next thing we're going to see here is this pie. Actually, I should make that larger. Let's make that larger right there. So this is an interesting segmented pie of self-concept and self-efficacy. Now, in our teachings through the Perform at Your Best training programs we have, which was created by Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy, if you were to search his name, he has 1.2 million listings, not as many as Google, but that's to be under, or not Google, but fear. But Brian helps us get over the fears. Matter of fact, one of the things you can do in and around getting fear out of your life is change the way you talk to yourself. I've been listening to a replay of his program, and it's a 28-minute audio on all around self-confidence. And there's 5 things we could do to increase our self-confidence, which helps eliminate and reduce the psychological, illogical fears that we might have that are not real, they're fantasized. As I was saying, fantasized experience, appearing real. So what Brian would say is to do short affirmations like, I can do it, I'm the best, I can do it, I'm the best, I like myself. And saying those over and over and over, because if we become what we think about, what we're saying to ourselves is kind of what we're thinking about, isn't it? And if we're saying those things, we don't have any room for doubt to creep in to stop us from taking the chances that we would like to, that would give us the life that we'd rather live than live, settling for mediocrity. So let's get to this chart. This chart, self-concept, is broken into 3 segments, as you can see here. I'm having trouble with my mouse. Here it comes, here it comes. So as you can see here, it's broken into 3 segments: self-ideals, self-image, and self-esteem. So how do you see yourself at your future best? So one of the things I get my clients to do is to write their ideal life story. Why do I want them to do that? So that they can create the image of themselves at their best possible, in the best possible light that they could come up with. And if they do that and think about it and start to move towards that, then their self-esteem increases. Now, there are ways that we can help people and ourselves raise our self-esteem. Some of them are really damn simple. What I found, though, is when I introduce these concepts into people is that our habitual thinking stops us from doing things that are not comfortable and natural for us to do. So we tend not to do all the things we could do to increase any one of these areas. But put that aside, self-ideals, self-image, and self-esteem are the core pieces of what determines what our self-concept is. Now, we all have self-concepts and self-images of ourselves in different things. So just imagine yourself as a driver, and you drive pretty darn good, right? Now that you've learned how to do that. What if I said, though, what if you have to drive on snow for the first time, or ice? Well, and if you can do that, that's cool. How about if you were to drive a Formula One car at full speed? And how do you think you would do? Well, I've never driven a F1 car, but I've ridden or used a simulator in slower rated cars. I think they were all Renaults at the time, but the simulator was so real. except for I didn't actually die when I crashed. I just pushed the button and reset. That part was wonderful. However, I learned in that experience that doing things at a faster speed, even though it's simulated, I wasn't very good at it. I got better as time went on, but still, I'm not ready to drive a real car that goes that fast, and when it crashes, you get injured or die. What I did learn, though, is my self-concept about a driver changed. I'm a very good driver on dry roads. I'm a pretty good driver on icy, snowy conditions, because where I live, we get an opportunity to develop that skill half of the year. So I'm pretty good there. But when you put me in a Formula One type car where it goes faster than anything I've driven on a consistent basis, yeah, my self-concept, I'm not very damn good. However, everything is learnable when we can get better, which is part of what I'm on here talking about today. So at the bottom of this circle, you'll see self-efficacy. So that just really means is our ability to get stuff done, our causative power, not positive, but our causative power. It's the other side of the self-concept coin. You need both. So if you have a high self-concept and if you have a high self-efficacy, then you are on the path of living your highest potential. But there's a 4-letter word that gets in the way. So let's look at that 4-letter word. It's fear. There it is right there. Fear everything and run, or face everything and rise. What do you do most of the time? I do both. I'm striving to move towards face everything and rise, but there's sometimes that my self-concept, like I was talking about with the simulated race car, I have work to do, which is a good thing. So as long as I'm living, I hope I have work to do on myself, that I can make myself a better person and a better contributor to society. So I ask you, what do you do? Face everything and rise, or fear of everything and run? And if it's going to be harmful, you better run. But so last but not least, to wrap this all up, win. So this has been a very powerful little word for me, because if you turn it into an acronym, it's actually more than just a word, but the word is where you end up because of it. And if you look at the word win and break it down into the 3 letters that it is, it stands for what's important now. So I think what would be important now, based on talking about fear, is to face everything and rise, and find ways to be inspired to act upon your fears, to grow through them, because everything you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with that today. What's important now? Face everything and rise. That's really what I would recommend you did today and every day, as best you can. And remember to track the times when you've actually tried something and won, and tried something and haven't won, but what did you learn in that? So creating your 100 success list. If you ever have a question for us at the Business Renovator, here's my contact information, phil@coachphil.ca. If you liked what this is about, share it. If you're watching this as a replay, hashtag replay, we'd like to know who's seen it. And if you've got some feedback for us, please send it our way. And with that, I'll leave you with, have a wonderful day, and spell wonderful with a U instead of an O, because you know what? You are wonderful. Remember, you are wonderful.